Introduction: The Richest Man in Babylon. A modern summary. Long before spreadsheets, credit cards, and retirement accounts, there was Babylon, an ancient city known not just for its walls and temples, but for its wealth. Merchants, traders, and craftsmen from across the world came to Babylon wondering the same thing people still wonder today. Why do some people always seem to get ahead, while others work just as hard, earn just as much, and still struggle? That question is at the heart of The Richest Man in Babylon. This book was written nearly 100 years ago, yet its lessons feel almost uncomfortably modern. Debt, overspending, living paycheck to paycheck, the hope that someday things will be easier. What makes this book different is that it doesn't talk about money in numbers or formulas. Instead, it tells simple stories, parables, that explain how wealth is built through habits, discipline, and long-term thinking. In this video, you're not going to hear the book read aloud. And this isn't meant to replace reading it. What you're about to hear is a modern explanation of the core ideas, rewritten in plain language, connected to modern life, and focused on what actually matters. Think of this as a guide to understanding why the rules work, not just what the rules are. Because the truth is, most people already know what they should do with money. Spend less than you earn. Save something. Avoid bad debt. And yet, very few people actually follow those rules consistently. This book isn't really about money. It's about behavior. It's about why people fail financially even when they earn good incomes, and why others slowly build wealth without flashy lifestyles or lucky breaks. Throughout this summary, we'll break down the book's main ideas one by one. Each section builds on the last. You'll hear about paying yourself first, controlling expenses without feeling deprived, making money work for you, protecting what you've built, and thinking beyond just today's problems. None of this requires being rich. None of it requires special talent. And none of it depends on the economy being perfect. These are rules that worked in ancient Babylon. And they still work now. If you apply even one of them consistently, it can change the direction of your financial life over time. As you listen, don't try to absorb everything at once. Just notice which idea feels uncomfortable, which one you've been avoiding, which one keeps coming back to you. That's usually the rule you need the most. Let's begin by understanding why Babylon became wealthy in the first place, and what that tells us about money today. Section 1. Why Babylon was rich. Babylon was not wealthy by accident. It wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. And it wasn't because its people were smarter than everyone else. Babylon became rich because its citizens followed a small set of rules, rules that governed how money was earned, saved, protected, and grown. That's the first lesson of the book. Wealth is not something that happens to you. It is something you build, slowly, through consistent behavior. In the stories told in The Richest Man in Babylon, the city itself acts like a symbol. Babylon represents a place where people understood money well enough to make it work for them. And the book makes a clear point. If wealth were simply about earning more, then the highest earners would always be the richest people. But we know that isn't true. There are people who make large incomes and live in constant stress, And there are others who earn modest wages, yet steadily build security over time. The difference isn't how much money they touch, it's how they handle it. Babylon's citizens learned something most people today still struggle with. Money follows rules. Ignore those rules, and money slips away no matter how hard you work. Follow them, and wealth begins to accumulate almost quietly. The book contrasts two types of people. The first type believes that money problems will solve themselves someday. They hope that the next raise, the next job, or the next opportunity will fix everything. The second type understands that without structure, money simply disappears. Babylon favored the second group, not because they were greedy, but because they were disciplined. One of the strongest ideas introduced here is that wealth is the result of decisions made repeatedly, not dramatic breakthroughs. Most people imagine wealth as a moment, a big promotion, a business success, a lucky break. Babylon teaches the opposite. Wealth is boring. It grows slowly. It rewards patience. And it punishes impulsiveness. The book makes it clear that cities, like individuals, become wealthy only when money is managed wisely. Babylon didn't just produce wealth, it kept it. That's a crucial distinction. Many people today earn money, but never hold on to it long enough for it to matter. The money passes through their hands as quickly as it arrives. Babylon's system ensured that wealth stayed within the city. And the same idea applies to personal finances. If money flows out as fast as it flows in, there is no progress. This section also quietly challenges a modern myth. The idea that money problems are caused mainly by low income. While income matters, the book suggests that poor habits are far more dangerous than low earnings. Without discipline, more income simply leads to more spending. Babylon's wealth came from structure, not excess. People lived within limits. They respected boundaries. They planned. And most importantly, they understood that money must serve a purpose beyond immediate comfort. This mindset is uncomfortable for many people. It forces you to confront choices. It removes the illusion that circumstances alone are to blame. But it also offers something powerful: control. If wealth is built through habits, then anyone willing to adopt those habits can change direction. The book doesn't promise riches overnight. It promises progress over time. Babylon became rich because its people treated money seriously, not emotionally, not impulsively, but intentionally. That understanding sets the foundation for everything that follows. Because once you accept that wealth follows rules, the next question becomes obvious. What are those rules? The first, and most important, begins with a simple idea that sounds obvious, but is rarely practiced. Pay yourself first. Section 2. Pay yourself first. The first rule of wealth in Babylon is simple. So simple, in fact, that most people dismiss it. Pay yourself first. At first glance, this sounds obvious. Of course you should save money. Everyone knows that. But the book isn't talking about saving whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month. It's talking about priority. In Babylon, the wealthy understood something most people today still ignore. If you wait until the end of the month to save, there will almost never be anything left. Expenses expand. Unexpected costs appear. Comfort always finds a way to justify itself. So the rule was this: before paying anyone else, before rent, before food, before entertainment, you paid yourself. Not a large amount, not an amount that caused pain, just a portion. Traditionally, the book suggests 1/10 of everything you earn. The exact percentage isn't the point. The habit is. This rule forces a mental shift. Instead of seeing savings as optional, you treat it like a bill, one that must be paid. And here's where most people get stuck. They say, "I can't afford to save right now." But Babylon's wisdom turns that thinking upside down. You can't afford not to. Because if you don't reserve money for yourself first, you guarantee that someone else will claim all of it. Landlords, lenders, subscriptions, impulse spending. Someone always gets paid. The question is whether that someone includes you. What makes this rule powerful is not the amount saved, it's the discipline it creates. When you set aside money first, something interesting happens. You're forced to live on slightly less. And most people discover that they can. They adjust. They prioritize. They cut small excesses without sacrificing their quality of life. The book makes an important point here. Living on 9/10 of your income does not feel dramatically different than living on all of it. But over time, saving nothing versus saving something creates two completely different futures. This is where modern life makes the rule even more relevant. Today, paying yourself first can be automated. Direct deposits, retirement contributions, automatic transfers to savings or investment accounts. Technology has made this rule easier than ever, yet fewer people follow it. Why? Because the obstacle isn't logistics. It's psychology. Saving feels like loss. Spending feels like reward. The book understood this long before behavioral science had a name for it. By saving first, you reverse that emotional pattern. You reward your future self before satisfying the present moment. Over time, this creates confidence. You begin to see money accumulating instead of disappearing. You feel less anxiety. You gain options, and options are the real foundation of wealth. Another key lesson here is that paying yourself first does not mean hoarding money. It means creating a foundation. The money you save is not meant to sit idle forever. It is meant to be protected, grown, and eventually put to work. But none of that can happen until the habit exists. The book also warns against a common mistake. Saving without discipline leads to temptation. If money is set aside, but easily accessible, people often dip into it just this once. Babylon's wisdom encourages respect for saved money. It should feel slightly untouchable, not impossible to reach, but protected from casual spending. This rule builds something far more valuable than dollars. It builds self-trust. Every time you pay yourself first, you prove that you can keep a promise to yourself. And that changes how you approach everything else. You stop relying on hope. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You begin acting with intention. This single rule, followed consistently, separates those who build wealth from those who always feel behind. Not because it makes you rich overnight, but because it creates momentum. And once momentum exists, the rest of the rules finally have something to work with. Because saving money is only the beginning. The next challenge is learning how to live well without letting expenses quietly erase your progress. That is the next rule Babylon teaches. Control your expenses. Section 3. Control your expenses. After learning to pay yourself first, most people run into the same problem. They save a little and then wonder where the rest of their money went. This is where Babylon introduces its next rule. Control your expenses. At first, this rule sounds restrictive. It feels like a call to deprivation. But that isn't what the book is teaching at all. The point is not to live miserably. The point is to live intentionally. In Babylon, the wealthy understood a truth that still applies today. Expenses will always rise to match income unless you deliberately stop them. When people earn more, they rarely feel richer. They simply upgrade their lifestyle, a nicer place to live, more convenience, more comfort. And slowly, without noticing, they end up just as tight as before. The book makes a clear distinction between necessary expenses and desired expenses. Necessary expenses are the costs that support your life and your ability to earn. Food, shelter, basic transportation. Desired expenses are everything else. Comfort, entertainment, status. Babylon's wisdom is not to eliminate desire. It is to keep desire in its place. Most people don't realize how much of their spending is driven by emotion. Stress leads to comfort spending. Boredom leads to impulse purchases. Comparison leads to unnecessary upgrades. The book reminds us that wealth leaks away quietly, not dramatically. It's rarely one big mistake. It's dozens of small decisions that feel harmless in the moment. This rule asks you to become aware, not obsessive, not anxious, just aware. When you track expenses, even briefly, something powerful happens. You see patterns. You notice where money consistently flows without adding much value. And once you see it, you regain choice. Controlling expenses does not mean cutting joy. It means choosing which joys are worth paying for. Babylon's wealthy citizens still enjoyed life. They celebrated. They lived comfortably. But they refused to let spending grow faster than their future. There is an important psychological shift here. When expenses are uncontrolled, money feels scarce, no matter how much you earn. When expenses are controlled, even modest income feels more manageable. This is why the book insists that controlling expenses comes after paying yourself first. You are not cutting to survive. You are adjusting to protect what you are building. In modern life, uncontrolled expenses often hide in plain sight. Subscriptions you forgot about, convenience fees, monthly payments that quietly drain flexibility. None of these feel dangerous alone. Together, they form a system that keeps people trapped. The rule is not to eliminate everything unnecessary. It is to decide consciously. If something truly improves your life, keep it. If it does not, question it. The book also points out something subtle. People who refuse to control expenses often blame income for their problems. But when income rises, the pressure rarely disappears. This creates a cycle of frustration, more work, more stress, no lasting relief. Controlling expenses breaks that cycle. It creates breathing room, and breathing room is where progress happens. This rule is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It forces you to look at choices rather than circumstances. But it is also empowering. Because once expenses are under control, savings stop feeling fragile. They stop being something you constantly dip into. They become something you protect. And that protection is essential. Because the next step in Babylon's path is not about saving more. It's about making saved money work for you. But money that constantly leaks away can never grow. So before wealth can multiply, it must be contained. That is why Babylon placed this rule where it did. Control your expenses, not to punish yourself, but to give your future a chance. Section 4. Make your gold multiply. Saving money is an achievement. But Babylon makes something very clear. Saving alone is not enough. Money that sits still slowly loses its power. It does not grow. And over time, it becomes vulnerable. This brings us to the next rule. Make your gold multiply. In Babylon, the wealthy understood that saved money must be put to work, not recklessly, not greedily, but purposefully. The book explains this idea in simple terms. Gold that earns nothing is like a seed left on a shelf. It remains safe, but it never becomes more. Only when planted carefully does it grow. This rule is often misunderstood. It is not an invitation to chase risk. It is a warning against stagnation. Babylon's message is not get rich quick. It is let time do the work. The book emphasizes that money grows best when it is invested in ways that are understandable, steady, and supported by knowledge. In modern terms, this means something important. You do not need to be an expert trader. You do not need secret strategies. And you do not need constant action. What you need is patience. One of the most powerful forces described, even if the book never uses the term, is compounding. When money earns returns, and those returns earn returns, growth accelerates quietly. This is why starting early matters more than starting big. Babylon teaches that small amounts, invested wisely over time, often outperform large amounts invested poorly or too late. This rule also introduces responsibility. Once money is invested, it must be watched, not obsessively, but attentively. Neglect invites loss. Babylon's citizens did not hand their gold to anyone who promised profit. They chose opportunities where their money was supported by experience, preparation, and real value being created. The book strongly warns against blind trust. If you do not understand how your money is growing, you are gambling, not investing. This lesson is especially relevant today. Modern life offers endless opportunities to make money work for you. Some are legitimate, many are not. Babylon's wisdom asks a simple question: where does the return come from? If the answer is unclear, complicated, or based entirely on hope, caution is required. Another key idea here is balance. The book does not encourage risking everything. It encourages diversification. Spreading money across multiple productive uses reduces danger and increases stability. Even in ancient times, Babylon's wealthy avoided putting all their gold in one place. They understood that growth and protection must exist together. This rule also highlights an emotional challenge. Once people begin saving, they often become overly cautious. Fear of loss keeps money frozen. Babylon recognizes this fear, but refuses to let it dominate. The goal is not to avoid risk entirely. The goal is to avoid unnecessary risk. Money should be placed where it has a reasonable chance to grow and a low chance to be destroyed. That balance is what separates growth from speculation. There is also a deeper lesson beneath the surface. When money begins to multiply, it changes how you think. You stop seeing income as your only source of progress. You begin to see assets working quietly in the background. This reduces pressure. It creates stability. And it frees mental energy for better decisions. But this rule only works if the earlier ones are respected. Money that is not saved cannot grow. Money that is constantly spent cannot multiply. Growth comes after discipline. Babylon's path is intentional. First you pay yourself, then you control expenses. Only then do you ask your money to work. Trying to skip ahead leads to frustration. Trying to multiply money before learning to protect it leads to loss. Which brings us to the next rule. Because once money begins to grow, it must be defended. Not every opportunity deserves your gold, and not every promise should be trusted. Babylon's next lesson is about protecting what you've built. Section 5. Protect your gold from loss. Once money begins to grow, a new danger appears: loss. Babylon understood something many people learn the hard way. It is easier to lose money than it is to earn it. That is why the next rule is not about growth, but protection. Protect your gold from loss. The book is very clear here. Not all opportunities are opportunities, and not all advice is worth following. Babylon's stories are filled with people who did everything right at first. They saved, they controlled expenses, they accumulated gold, and then they lost it. Not because they were foolish, but because they trusted the wrong people, the wrong promises, or the wrong instincts. One of the most important lessons in this rule is about confidence versus competence. Babylon warns against people who sound convincing but lack real understanding. They speak confidently. They promise returns. They appeal to greed or urgency. But confidence does not equal skill. In modern life, this lesson is more relevant than ever. There is no shortage of people willing to tell you where to put your money. Friends, co-workers, online personalities, anonymous tips. Babylon's wisdom offers a simple filter. Never invest in something you do not understand. If you cannot explain how your money will grow, in plain language, you are not investing. You are speculating. Another key warning in this rule is about risk disguised as opportunity. High returns often come with high danger. Babylon teaches that wealth is not built by chasing the biggest gains, but by avoiding the biggest losses. A single bad decision can erase years of discipline. This is why protection matters more than speed. The book also highlights the value of expert guidance, but with caution. Seeking advice is wise. Blindly following it is not. Babylon's wealthy citizens sought counsel from those who had proven success in the same field. They did not take investment advice from people who had never built wealth themselves. This principle still applies. Advice should come from experience, not enthusiasm. Another subtle lesson here is emotional control. Many losses occur not because of bad information, but because of emotion. Fear causes panic selling. Greed causes overconfidence. Impatience causes people to abandon good plans too early. Babylon understood that money magnifies emotion. The more you have at stake, the harder it becomes to think clearly. That is why protection must be built into your approach before emotion takes over. The book also warns against putting all your gold in one place. Diversification is not a modern concept. Babylon's citizens spread their wealth across multiple productive uses to reduce risk. If one investment failed, it did not destroy everything. This principle protects not just money, but peace of mind. Knowing that one mistake cannot ruin you creates stability, and stability leads to better decisions. There is also an important mindset shift in this rule. Babylon does not teach fear of loss. It teaches respect for risk. Money should not be hidden away forever, but neither should it be exposed carelessly. Protection means choosing growth paths that allow you to sleep at night. It means favoring durability over excitement. It means understanding that slow progress, protected consistently, almost always outperforms reckless ambition. The book makes a final, powerful point here. Those who lose money often blame luck. Those who keep money understand responsibility. Loss is rarely random. It usually comes from ignoring warning signs, trusting the wrong sources, or acting emotionally. Babylon's wisdom is not harsh. It is realistic. If you wish to build wealth, you must accept the responsibility of guarding it. Growth without protection is temporary. Protection without growth is stagnant. Wealth requires both. This rule prepares you for the next phase. Because once money is protected, another question arises. How do you reduce the pressure money problems place on your daily life? How do you create stability, not just numbers on a page? Babylon's next lesson addresses this directly by focusing on the place you live and the foundation beneath your financial life. Section 6. Make your home a profitable investment. After teaching how to save, grow, and protect money, Babylon turns its attention to something more personal. Your home. This rule often surprises people because it isn't really about real estate speculation or becoming a landlord. It's about stability. The book teaches this principle as make your home a profitable investment. At its core, this rule is not about maximizing returns. It's about minimizing financial pressure. In Babylon, housing was one of the largest ongoing expenses a person faced, just like today. When housing costs were unpredictable or excessive, people struggled to make progress, no matter how disciplined they were elsewhere. Babylon's wisdom recognized that a stable home creates a stable mind, and a stable mind makes better financial decisions. The book encourages people to seek arrangements where their housing costs work with them, not against them. In ancient terms, this often meant owning one's home. But the deeper lesson goes beyond ownership. It's about control and predictability. A home that constantly drains resources creates stress. A home that fits within your means creates breathing room. This rule is frequently misunderstood in modern discussions. Babylon is not saying everyone must buy a house at any cost. It is saying that housing decisions should support long-term progress, not sabotage it. Whether renting or owning, the goal is the same: stability, predictable expenses, reasonable costs, a place that allows you to save, invest, and plan. The book contrasts two approaches. One person stretches too far, choosing comfort, status, or size beyond what their income can support. The other chooses a home that aligns with their financial foundation. Over time, the difference becomes enormous. The first person remains trapped, constantly adjusting other parts of their life to keep up. The second gains flexibility. This rule also highlights a subtle psychological benefit. When your housing situation is secure, you are less vulnerable to fear-based decisions. You are less likely to chase risky opportunities, less likely to panic during setbacks, more able to think long-term. Babylon understood that financial growth does not happen in chaos. It happens in environments that support discipline. Another important idea here is ownership of outcome. When housing costs are aligned with income, you reclaim control. You are no longer reacting month to month. You are directing resources with intention. The book also touches on pride, but not in the modern sense of display. Babylon's citizens valued the dignity of having a place they could call their own, a foundation that was not constantly threatened. That dignity translated into confidence, and confidence translated into better choices. In modern life, this rule can take many forms. It may mean buying modestly instead of stretching. It may mean renting strategically while building savings. It may mean downsizing to regain margin. The form does not matter. The principle does. Housing should support your future, not consume it. Babylon's wisdom also warns against allowing housing decisions to be driven by comparison. Just because others spend more does not mean you should. Wealth is not built by matching lifestyles. It is built by maintaining margin. This rule ties directly into the earlier lessons. Things become easier when housing is reasonable. Investments grow faster when expenses are predictable. Money is easier to protect when stress is lower. The book places this rule here for a reason. Before planning far into the future, you must secure the present. A stable home creates a platform for everything else. And once that platform exists, attention can shift forward. Because Babylon's final lessons are not just about today or tomorrow. They are about preparing for a future that will arrive whether you plan for it or not. The next rule looks beyond the present moment, toward income that lasts, protection for those you care about, and security that extends beyond your working years. Section 7. Ensure a future income. Babylon's final rules move beyond the present moment. Up to this point, the book has focused on habits that create stability today. Saving, controlling expenses, growing and protecting money, and building a solid foundation. Now the focus shifts forward, toward time, toward uncertainty, toward a future that will arrive whether you prepare for it or not. This rule is simple in wording, but heavy in meaning. Ensure a future income. Babylon understood something that modern life often encourages people to ignore. Your ability to earn money will not last forever. Energy changes. Health changes. Opportunities change. Ignoring this reality does not prevent it. It only makes it more painful. The book teaches that true wealth is not just about having money now. It is about creating systems that continue to provide support when active work slows or stops. In Babylon, this meant planning for old age and protecting one's family from hardship. In modern terms, the principle is the same. You must think beyond your current paycheck. The rule emphasizes foresight. Small steps taken consistently over time can create security later, without requiring dramatic sacrifice today. Babylon did not expect people to predict the future. It expected them to respect it. One of the most powerful ideas in this section is that future income should not rely on a single source. Babylon's citizens understood diversification long before the term existed. They sought income streams that could continue even if one failed. This mindset reduces fear. When income is fragile, anxiety grows. When income is layered, confidence follows. The book also introduces the idea of protection. Ensuring a future income is not just about earning more. It is about safeguarding what already exists. This includes preparing for illness, accidents, and unexpected events. Babylon recognized that a single setback could undo years of effort if no protection was in place. This lesson is uncomfortable. It forces people to confront uncertainty. But Babylon's wisdom is not pessimistic. It is practical. Planning for difficulty does not invite it. It simply ensures that difficulty does not destroy everything. Another subtle point in this rule is responsibility. Babylon encouraged individuals to take ownership of their future rather than relying on chance, family, or society to provide. This is not about isolation. It is about dignity. The ability to support yourself and those who depend on you creates freedom. It reduces dependence on last-minute decisions, and it prevents desperation. The book also challenges a common excuse. Many people believe they will figure it out later. But Babylon's wisdom reminds us that later is built from now. Waiting delays momentum. Delaying action reduces options. Future income is not created suddenly. It is built quietly through consistent preparation. This rule ties directly back to the earlier ones. You cannot plan for the future without savings. You cannot save consistently without controlling expenses. You cannot grow or protect money without discipline. Babylon's system is connected. Each rule supports the next. Ensuring a future income also changes how you view time. Instead of seeing the future as distant, you begin to see it as approaching. This creates urgency, but not panic. It encourages thoughtful action. It encourages patience. And it encourages balance. The book does not demand obsession with the future. It asks for awareness. A small portion of effort today can remove enormous pressure tomorrow. That is the promise of this rule. Babylon's citizens were not free from hardship, but they were prepared. And preparation changes everything. With future income secured, attention can finally turn inward, toward growth, toward ability, toward becoming someone who earns more, not by working harder, but by working wiser. That is where Babylon's final lesson leads, because money alone does not create wealth. The person who earns it matters just as much. Section 8. Increase your ability to earn. After covering saving, discipline, protection, and preparation, Babylon ends its lessons with something surprisingly simple. You. Not money, not investments, not opportunity. Your ability to earn. This final rule recognizes a truth many people overlook. Money comes and goes. Skills stay. Babylon taught that the greatest asset you can own is not gold, but the ability to create value. This idea reframes the entire journey. Up to this point, the rules focused on what to do with money once you have it. Now, the focus is on becoming someone who can earn more, naturally, sustainably, and repeatedly. The book emphasizes that income is not fixed. It is influenced by knowledge, skill, effort, and willingness to improve. Babylon's wealthiest citizens were not content with what they already knew. They studied. They learned from others. They refined their craft. This was not done for status or pride. It was done because increased ability leads to increased opportunity. The book makes a clear point. Those who stop learning eventually stop growing. In modern life, this lesson is more relevant than ever. The world changes quickly. Skills become outdated. New demands appear. Babylon's wisdom encourages adaptation. Not frantic change, but steady improvement. Increasing your ability to earn does not require dramatic reinvention. It requires curiosity, asking questions, seeking instruction, being willing to start as a beginner. This rule also challenges ego. Many people avoid learning because it exposes what they don't know. Babylon recognized that humility is a strength. Those willing to learn from others rise faster than those who pretend to know everything. Another important idea here is effort alignment. Hard work alone is not enough. Effort must be directed toward skills that the world values. Babylon's citizens focused on trades, crafts, and services that met real needs. They did not chase every trend. They built competence where demand existed. This lesson protects against wasted effort. Working hard in the wrong direction leads to exhaustion without reward. Working wisely in the right direction compounds over time. The book also highlights the role of reputation. In Babylon, Those who delivered consistent value earned trust, and trust led to opportunity. This principle still applies. Reliability increases earning power. Competence attracts work. Integrity creates long-term relationships. These qualities cannot be faked. They are built through repeated action. Another subtle but powerful point is that increased earning ability strengthens every other rule. Higher income makes saving easier. Controlled expenses create surplus faster. Investments grow more efficiently. Future planning becomes less stressful. This is why Babylon places this rule at the end. Without discipline, higher income is wasted. With discipline, higher income accelerates everything. The book does not promise that increasing your ability will make life effortless. It promises that it will make progress possible. Growth requires time. Learning requires patience. Improvement requires consistency. But Babylon's wisdom is encouraging. You do not need to become extraordinary. You only need to become slightly better than you were yesterday, repeatedly. Over time, small improvements compound just like money, and eventually, the person you become earns differently than the person you were. This final rule completes the system. Money habits build stability. Protection preserves progress. Planning secures the future. But growth comes from within. Babylon's message is clear. Wealth is not built by chance. It is built by people who choose discipline, patience, and growth, again and again. That mindset, more than any rule, is what made Babylon rich. And it is what allows wealth to endure long after the gold itself has changed hands. Section 9. The Babylon Mindset. Final Synthesis. At this point, the rules of Babylon are no longer separate ideas. They form a system. Each rule depends on the others. Each one strengthens the next. Taken together, they reveal something important. Wealth is not about money. It is about mindset. Throughout these lessons, Babylon never promised ease. It never promised luck. And it never promised instant results. What it offered instead was control. Control over habits. Control over choices. Control over direction. The people who prospered in Babylon were not special. They did not have secret advantages. They did not escape hardship. They simply chose to live differently, consistently. They paid themselves first, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. They controlled expenses, not to punish themselves, but to protect their future. They allowed their money to grow patiently, rather than chasing excitement. They guarded what they built, understanding that loss could undo years of effort. They chose stability in their living situation, so daily stress did not sabotage long-term plans. They prepared for the future, knowing time is undefeated. And finally, they invested in themselves, increasing their ability to earn, adapt, and create value. What makes these lessons powerful is not their originality. Most of them feel obvious when stated plainly, and yet most people ignore them. Why? Because they require discipline instead of emotion. They reward patience instead of urgency. They work quietly, without applause. Babylon's wisdom asks you to trade short-term comfort for long-term freedom. That trade is uncomfortable at first, but it becomes empowering over time. One of the most important realizations from this book is that wealth does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates, often unnoticed. Small habits compound. Small decisions stack. Small margins create big differences. The person who saves a little consistently will eventually outrun the person who saves nothing perfectly. The person who avoids large mistakes will often outperform the person chasing large wins. Babylon does not glorify extremes. It respects balance. Another key idea worth remembering is that wealth is deeply personal. These rules are not meant to be followed perfectly. They are meant to be applied honestly. What matters is not how quickly you adopt them, but whether you adopt them at all. And even one rule, practiced consistently, can change the trajectory of a life. This is why the book endures. Not because it teaches finance, but because it teaches responsibility. Responsibility without shame. Responsibility without fear. Just the understanding that your future is shaped more by daily choices than by circumstances. The Babylon mindset does not eliminate struggle, but it replaces confusion with clarity. It replaces anxiety with structure, and it replaces hope with intention. As you finish this summary, there is no need to remember every rule. Just remember this: money responds to behavior. Change the behavior, and money follows. Ignore the behavior, and no amount of income will ever be enough. If you choose to explore further, the original book offers these lessons through story and parable, with details worth experiencing firsthand. But whether you read it or not, the message remains. Wealth is built slowly. It is protected carefully, and it is sustained by those who continue to grow. That was true in Babylon, and it is still true today. Section 10. What to do next? Closing and call to action. At this point, you've heard the full system, not a list of tricks, not shortcuts, not promises of overnight change. A framework, one that has worked for generations, because it is rooted in behavior, not trends. So the most important question now is not what Babylon taught. It's what you will do with it. Most people finish a book or a summary like this and feel inspired for a short time. They nod along. They agree with the ideas. They tell themselves they'll come back to it later. And then, life resumes. Babylon's wisdom quietly warns against that pattern. Knowledge that is not acted on has no power. The book never asks you to change everything at once. In fact, it discourages that. It asks for something much smaller and much harder. Consistency. If there is one practical takeaway to hold on to, it is this. Choose one rule and apply it deliberately for the next 30 days, not perfectly, not aggressively, just honestly. If paying yourself first feels uncomfortable, start there. If expenses quietly drain your progress, focus there. If fear keeps money frozen, learn patiently. If instability creates stress, simplify. If the future feels distant, prepare gently. If earning feels capped, invest in growth. Any one of these, practiced consistently, is enough to begin changing direction. Babylon's greatest strength was not wealth itself. It was patience. The people in its stories understood that progress does not announce itself. It happens quietly, often invisibly. Weeks pass before habits feel natural. Months pass before progress becomes noticeable. Years pass before outcomes become undeniable. This is why so many people quit too early. They mistake silence for failure. Babylon teaches that silence is often growth happening beneath the surface. Another important reminder is this: there is no finish line. Wealth is not a destination you arrive at and stop managing. It is a process you maintain. The habits that build stability must also preserve it. That does not mean life becomes rigid or joyless. It means life becomes intentional. Intentional choices reduce regret. Intentional habits reduce anxiety. Intentional planning reduces fear of the unknown. Babylon's lessons are not meant to dominate your life. They are meant to support it. If this summary resonated with you, consider exploring the original book. Its stories offer texture, humor, and detail that deepen these ideas, and revisiting them over time often reveals new insights, because your perspective changes as your life changes. If you're listening to this as part of a series, the next summaries will continue exploring timeless ideas from public domain works, explained in plain language, with practical meaning for modern life. And if you're here for the long term, remember this: you do not need to be extraordinary to build a stable, secure future. You need to be deliberate. You need to be patient. And you need to be willing to make small choices consistently, even when no one is watching. That is the real lesson of Babylon. Not that wealth is rare, but that discipline is. And those who choose it, quietly and consistently, change their lives over time.